Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our online lessons on looking at Liechtenauer's verse and the commentary from 44A8 or the von Danzig manuscript. Tonight we are looking at the Twerhau or Twerhau, and we're going to go into some depths with some of the techniques and counters. And I had luckily had the chance to record a few little clips of video demonstrating some of the stuff and my interpretations of some of this stuff. How's everyone doing tonight?
Great.
Good.
Everyone's doing good?
Yeah.
Great. So want to jump right into starting off with the first bit here. Of course, as I say this, I've lost my page.
98, if you're looking for the
There it is. Yep. My bookmark fell out. Sorry. Let's start off with Liechtenauer's verse itself. The Thwart Stroke. The Thwart Stroke takes whatever comes from the roof. Thwart with the strong, note your work with this. Thwart to the plow, to the ox, hard together. He who thwarts well, with springing he endangers the head. Whoever conducts the failer from below, he hits at his will. The reverser enforces the running through and also brings wrestling. The elbow takes certainly. Very Fiore of him. Bring into his balance. Double the failer if you hit, also make the slice. Twice further on, step to the left and do not be slow. Now, before we even go on to anything about that, this is the whole idea of the Merc verse, the content written in a certain code that those who are initiated into the training would understand, and those who aren't wouldn't have an idea. This is very much an example of a section that, if it were not for the later masters, we would have no idea what any of this meant. But luckily, we have those later masters that kind of are, oh, okay, this is what he's talking about. So before I go into breaking any of this down, what stands out to any of you?
The part where it says where it goes into the failer and the reverser, because I don't know what that means.
Okay, well, I have video of some of that. We'll go over that a little more in depth, but I have some video of the double the failer part. That's one of my favorites. Yeah, I see Rob smiling. He knows what that one is.
One of my favorites too.
Yeah, it's so hard to get to pull off, but when it is beautiful. I
know. I haven't tried it in a while.
Yeah. Every time I do, I never get the full setup. I get the second one. It just doesn't work.
Note your work with this. Why is that most important, and what does it mean? From Christopher.
Yeah, Chris in the comments. So at the very beginning here, the Thwart Stroke takes whatever comes from the roof. Thwart with the strong, note your work with this.
Don't just hit.
That is a good question. Honestly, I think it might be tied to a matter of he's saying thwart with the strong, note your work with this. It's a note of don't forget this part. This is significant. And
take notes here.
Yeah, like, hey, big hint, because if you try to throw your thwart and you meet their blade on your weak out towards the tip of the sword, what happens?
Wait, hang on.
I mean,
can you run that by me again? Because I wasn't quite sure what you were asking.
If you're coming into the bind, you are throwing your thwart, your horizontal cut here, this way, and then they catch you out on the weak of your sword, not the strong. What happens? You stop here. You don't get to go through. You don't follow through. If you try to do this without losing my damn page again. If you meet on the strong down here, you still get this pivot around, and I think this is something that's often overlooked with the thwart with the Zwerch, that there's this point where your opponent's blade is meeting up towards your crossguard or somewhere on your strong. And again, he's saying, note your work with this. And that rotation there lets your blade pivot around and let me hold that down a little more. This way, it pivots around their blade and basically wraps in around, almost hitting in the back. That's why, particularly when we do it from the left, a lot of times there's always a risk of wrapping around and getting somebody in the back of the head behind the mask if they don't have a back of the head plate on, which for many years doing this stuff, we didn't have back of the head plates. It was fun. But if you're meeting in the middle of your blade or on the weak of your blade and not on the strong, you don't bind properly here. You can't complete that stroke and get that wrap in and strike around. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I think one of the first bits there, the Thwart Stroke takes whatever comes from the roof. I think that's fairly significant. That's it tells you right in the beginning there, from the roof, the vom Tag. So
I was thinking high
he's
vom
saying
Tag for that one.
definite high vom Tag is definitely it's optimized for that. So why is it so good to use, whether it's high vom Tag or a low shouldered vom Tag? What makes the Thwart Stroke a nice option to use there?
I guess it kind of throws your opponent off, perhaps, if they don't expect you to, suddenly leap, and then, your blade kind of comes out of nowhere from the side if they're not expecting it.
That can be part of it, the general angle. But another part of it is when you complete your thwart, what guard are you ending in?
Ox.
Yes, you're ending in ox. And what does ox defend against?
It defends against
High
Oberhaus.
bomb dog?
Defends against Oberhaus.
And if your opponent is in vom Tag, especially high vom Tag, we can fairly safely make the assumption that it might not be the case, but there's a good significant chance that their attack is going to come as an Oberhaus from that high position, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by its nature, by simply, regardless of what happens with binding and distance or anything, if you're ending your thwart cut, you're ending in a position that closes off the most likely line of attack from your opponent. Now, some of these things, obviously, it changes. If someone's sneaky, they can always throw a Unterhau or transition to a thrust and whatever. But again, at that point, then we're fencing. If you're fighting somebody and they're in especially high vom Tag, it's safe to say that most likely their attack is just going to come straight down on you. So moving into ox aggressively is a great tactical decision. Let's see. Another thing interesting here is thwart to. I'm gonna have so much problem with this, like the tongue twister. Thwart to the plow to the ox hard together. What does that mean to anybody?
What to the plow?
Like, do it in that order? Like, do the Thwart Stroke, go into a plow guard, and then sweep up into ox? Maybe?
I was gonna guess that. No, I don't know. Thwart to the plow to the ox hard together.
Well,
Rob, Luke, do you guys have anything to add?
Attacking in a crosswise pattern, so low to their left and then high to their right, switching back and forth from that.
Yeah, and I mean even more simple than that. That he's saying that the thwart cut itself can be thrown to the ox and the plow, so you can throw it to high targets and you can throw it to low targets. Which
it does say together as well.
Yes. Which, what is that drill that we do all the time with the Zersh?
Helicopter of Doom.
The
Yeah,
high,
but
high,
what do we
low,
target?
High, high,
Yep.
low,
Yeah,
low.
high, low, low.
Yep, exactly.
That's
So that's
actually,
why
I
we
think
do
that's
this.
one of the plays in Ringak is going from low left to high right to ox on the other side, and then to plow on the other side, and then I think you finish it off with just an overhow.
Okay. Yeah, the idea is that
I
even
think
though
it's
you're
called
keeping it,
another technique.
it's
That's my
German.
favorite
It's either
technique.
something awesome like throwing the whatchamacallit, something awesome like Zwerchau, the thwarting stroke of deadly wrath and anger, or it's like another one. They were occasional, like they used all their points and creativity in like 3 techniques and then just stopped. So, but yeah, the part about thwarting to the plow to the ox hard together, that's part of why when we do our solo drill with the Zwerch, we target high, high, low, low, just to get used to transitioning between the different lines while keeping the hands high ourselves. He thwarts well with springing, endangers the head. I think that's he endanger.
Oh yeah, I have it right
He
here.
who thwarts well with springing, I think, is interesting. He endangers the head. This is something that I've noticed biomechanics wise with the Zwerch, that it's not like the Crump where we're jumping straight out like way to the side, but there is a biomechanical issue with if you come into the bind using the Zwerch against somebody striking down from above, and aren't careful with it, you're if you step too far in the center line with your
Something
right foot,
flat and rigid.
you end up losing pressure,
It's flat.
regardless of how
and you
strong
can't get
you
that
are.
rotation that you were talking
Yeah.
about before.
Because it's all in the body positioning. If you take that step out and you step kind of off at that 45-degree angle bit, that springing thwart well with springing, that nice solid step to the side, what happens is your core is kind of focused on your opponent, not one shoulder. So when you're here ending, you don't have much strength left. You're just kind of reliant on the strength of the arms here and the forearms and the fingers. When you're here and you have your body facing them, you can get the rotation in to get the extra wrap around to threaten the head, but you also, it's just the biomechanics of that. You have this much advantage, this much stability in your core, in your legs, in your chest, not just in your arms. So I think that's an important part of understanding this. And I hope that I shot some video just really quick earlier today, and hopefully we can make that make that pretty understandable there. The other parts in this, I think, are whoever conducts the failure from below, he hits at his will, the reverser. So another part of this is the second half of the verse on this is basically some different follow-on plays and counters. And I do like that he refers to the reverser, the Verker, which is one we don't actually practice too much, but we'll talk about it. He makes a point to talk about the reverser is great to use against bringing wrestling. The elbow takes certainly. So that's too bad Jason's not here tonight, but the elbow takes certainly sounds very Fiore, doesn't it? Everything in Fiore is like get in close and take the elbow, get in close and take the elbow. And there's some speculation I had heard that Fiore had trained with German people at some point, and it's like there's a part of me that just kind of thinks, well, maybe he got to this one section in a class and was like, this is brilliant. I will focus my entire manuscript about this one principle. We will do this over and over and over again. Oh, and then the bit here about double the failure, blah blah blah. These are just some techniques using the utilizing the Zwerch. So I think some of this, like I said, I have some video on, and we'll look at the Von Danzig commentaries that talk about it. So any questions about the verse there itself before we move on?
Chris, I had another
I'll be
thought
right back.
regarding the note your work in this, or however that was phrased.
The oh yeah.
Perhaps they're referring to note how your attack lands, where it lands, and how your opponent reacts to it, so you can properly follow up.
Oh yeah, I think that's because the other.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chris. I may have to leave a little earlier, but I will catch whatever you put on YouTube.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
But
We'll
I'll
miss
stick
you
around.
regardless, but
Yeah, there's something came up that I have to do with my brother and sister, but I'm gonna stay on until I can, so I can see if
as long as you can.
or not. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. I appreciate the heads up that you don't just disappear.
That's why I walked out for a second to talk to them real quick.
Yeah, but Rob, to what you were saying about note your work with this, the actual the full part of that is the thwart with the strong, note your work with this. That's all part of like one sentence here.
Yeah.
So it's paired with the idea of striking with the strong on this one. So it's something to think about for you.
Okay.
And let's see. So yeah, if everybody else is all set, we'll move on to Von Danzig here.
Ashley apparently says hello.
She'll probably watch it later on or something. So hi, Ashley, when she's watching it on YouTube next sometime over the week.
Yeah, she had something come up, so she told me to make sure she,
Got acknowledged.
She wishes she could be here.
You're getting a special call out on our YouTube channel. Some channels charge for that. I mean, just saying.
You can take it over there, Ashley.
Yeah. Here begins the text and gloss of the Zwerchau, Thwart Stroke, with its technique. The thwart takes whatever comes from the roof. Note, the Zwerch breaks the guard von Tag from the roof, and all strokes that are struck down from above. And the Zwerchau should be done thus. When you come to him in the Zufechten, then stand with your left foot forward and hold your sword on your right shoulder. If he stands against you and holds his sword with outstretched arms up over his head and threatens to strike from above to you, then come to him first with your stroke and spring with your right foot well to your right side toward him. And as you spring, wind your sword so that the hilt is before your head with your thumb underneath and strike with the short edge against the left side of his head.
All right, guys,
or if he gets in first.
I'm sorry, but I have to bail out on this. I will see you guys next week. I'm very sorry about this late notice.
No problem. See you later, Jack.
Bye, Jack.
Yeah.
Second paragraph here. Or if he gets in first with his stroke against you down from above, then spring with your right foot out from the stroke well to your right side with the previously described parrying. Thus you will catch his stroke on your hilt and strike him with the Zwerchau to the left side of his head. So I think that's a pretty straightforward breakdown of how to do this, correct? Now, one thing that I do like is it makes a point to say, as you spring, wind your sword so that the hilt is before your head with your thumb underneath and strike with the short edge. So there's that rotation here. So if you're coming in, you're starting off with your true edge forward. However, you're coming into this situation, as soon as you put your thumb under the blade, well, it's already starting to get twisted over into that short edge. And now I make that winding action and cut up from above, or cut up horizontally. Sorry. Now, before we even go on and talk, I should have my video loaded up here. You share. I don't know how. That might play real choppy for some people.
Yeah, it was pretty shabby.
Yeah.
So let's do this. This worked well before. So.
Interesting. I wonder why.
Where is my annotate? So here is my body. You notice I have my shoulders kind of this way. My hips are this way. Now, as I go and move, what's that for a second? I've reversed it. So here, so obviously I'm striking in against an opponent, imaginary opponent here. But if you notice, between this red line here and this point here, I've made that full step where these are kind of opposite each other, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's part of this that is just the cut, but there's also a big part of this that's that body change. So that you can see here in this video, just the way my hips are sort of aligned. And then as I do this, I'm imagining my opponent's blade meeting me about here, where on the other side of the sword here, but you know what I mean, with a where the crossguard is, to give me that ability, let's say, to wrap with my short edge around. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
That's like a pivot point.
It is.
Yes. It is exactly that. Let me hit annotate and clear that for a second. Clear. There we go. I wish this would play a little smoother for people.
It's been smooth in the past. I don't know why it's being choppy now.
So it's that rotation there is what is significant to this. And this is one thing that I like to do. You see how far over my point is compared to if I'm throwing just, say, an overhow or something. When I'm doing this just solo or practicing on a Pell or whatever at home, I'm just training, I try to make sure that my point isn't stopping out in front of me, in front of my own face. I'm trying to focus on that cut passing through with the short edge, basically hitting them in the left side of their head, but coming out the right side of their head. I try to get that full rotation there to come straight through. Make some sense?
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting here is when he talks about these two paragraphs about Vom Tag and the second one, what's the difference between the application here between the two paragraphs? I don't want to just tell you the answer.
Well, the first one is you doing it, like getting in there first, and the second one is you're against his blade because he got down on you first. But I don't remember if it was this part or another part in the future, we were confused about whether you're supposed to do them, like do the first paragraph first and then the second paragraph, or if the second paragraph is a different scenario in which your opponent's blade is in your face sooner than you anticipated, and you have to alter the first paragraph a bit.
Yeah, I think that's you're definitely on the right track. Yes. The big difference between the first one and the first paragraph from Von Danzig and the second there is essentially just timing. If your opponent's in Vom Tag, you can either throw the Zversh to cut into him, or if he's in Vontag and he's actively attacking you, you can also do it. And I think the point there, the distinction is that there's not a distinction. That it doesn't matter if your opponent has already struck or if you are the one taking the initial initiative. Either way, this technique's going to work because by its nature, you're cutting off the high line of attack. So, in other words, it works either way. Don't stress about which way you get there. If your opponent's in Vontag, especially high Vontag, just get ready to throw a Zverch. If they happen to beat you in timing and they flinch first and whatever, and they throw the cut, then do the Zverch. If they're standing there and they just relax for a second or whatever, and you have the ability to take the first cut, then throw the Zverch. Either way, you're going to win.
Got it.
Alright, cool.
Always
Back.
do the dash.
I know.
Got it.
Yeah,
Nothing
that
else.
is a good way to break it down. Okay, so let me get. I should have made these two separate videos instead of one, but let's take a look at just that. Share screen. See, what's throwing me off is I was using Zoom at work over the week, but on a Mac, and the Mac version is slightly different, and buttons are in slightly different places, just enough to annoy me. So here's a quick little video. There is me waiting here in low Vontag, and my opponent waiting in high Vontag. And what do I do against that? Boom.
All right.
If they don't react at all, then you hit them in the arms and or head, and yay. Also,
Yay.
ignore this was shot kind of last minute in a hurry while I was in the middle of doing yard work, so ignore the. It looks much better now. All that's cleaned up, but so here, start off on guard. Oh no, my opponent is in high Vontag. What do I do? How about if I throw a Zverch? Well, that seems to work. I think, yep. So in this case, I'm not intentionally targeting the hands. I'm targeting the head, but the hands are just in the way, and the hands are going to give, and I'm still going to hit her in the head anyway. I'm being nice because she's not wearing any forearm protection, so I'm trying to be gentle with it. But if she is coming in with an attack, so here, instead of me just waiting for her to, or taking control, now I'm responding to her action of cutting down from the high guard, and as a result, my attack catches and I strike in. Now here's where we get into some of the follow-ons, because if she's coming down at you, it's a little harder to get that initial, and this is where that note the work on the strong. Look at where my sword is catching on hers. Where's my annotate? I like this annotate thing. It is cool. Right where that bind is happening. What part of my sword is that?
The strong part of your sword.
Yep. Which gives me the ability to kind of rotate, which we're looking at it at, from a side angle, so it's hard to, it's a little hard to see, but I'm able to actually pivot here across this point and strike in at her head. So my point is still hitting her in the left side of the head, and I'm just basically wrapping around this point of contact. This is actually one of those things that I see as a sort of issue when people do cutting with long swords. A lot of times they are looking to try to get a full passing cut straight through a target and everything with a Zverch, but when you don't have the feedback from your opponent here, this attack isn't meant to cleave straight through and come out 8 other people on the other side. It's meant to just get this point here of wrapping around their blade as a pivot point and striking with the very tip right into basically their ear or the side of their face. So it's not a massive slicing, cleaving cut like an Oberhau or an Unterhau would be. It's a thing of a little more precision than that. So any comments about that then?
That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think that part's pretty straightforward. I believe anyway. I think, yeah, I don't think there's anything else we really need to note other than, yeah, like I was kind of saying already, just the idea that if your opponent's in Vom Tag, get ready to throw a Zwerch. If they don't do anything, throw a Zwerch. If they do something, throw a Zwerch. Either way, you're going to at least have a bit of a tactical advantage going into this by being in a position with your sword held high. Note a counter against the Zwerch. When you stand against him in the guard Vom Tag, then strike bravely above to his head. If he springs out from the stroke and he intends to come well before you with the Zwerch and strikes with it to the left side of your head, then fall with your long edge on his sword. If he then strikes around with the Zwerch to the other side, then come immediately before also with the Zwerch in front under his sword on his neck. In this way, he strikes himself with your sword. So this is a counter to the Zwerch, essentially, by using the Zwerch. Now, offhand, quick, before we even get into discussion, who remembers doing this ever in class? Because I know this is one we've done. Yep, Matt, Kelsey, Trevor, Rob. Yeah, you guys remember this one? So this is just the idea that you can use the Zwerch to counter the Zwerch. Before I start talking too much again, does anyone have anything to add to that? Matt, Sarah, Rob, anybody that's done it a bunch, do you want to add any?
It works.
No? Okay. It works, yeah.
Hold on, Matt does. He just needs me to work the button.
And it's ridiculously fast. Of all the
Yes.
counters, I think the counter Zwerch is one of the fastest.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to remember with it too is so if a person is throwing that normal double Zwerch that, just boom, boom, there's this time where they're coming in here and they're doing that 360 spin to get around to the other side. To do the counter, you don't really have. They're giving you a timing advantage by taking their blade out of presence, coming all the way around and striking them around to the other side. So we can take advantage of that by simply doing a shortened Zwerch before they get there. And part of this, and I think there's a clue about some of this by when you stand against him in the guard Vom Tag. So the first section of this is talking about if he stands in Vom Tag, throw the Zwerch. The follow-up is now you stand in Vom Tag. So assuming that your opponent has trained in the system and knows how to fight based on the same rules of, engagement and everything, whatever you want to call it, that, we've learned in this stuff. If I go to especially high Vom Tag, my opponent is most likely going to plan to throw a Zwerch. That gives me an advantage. Yes, the Zwerch has the advantage over Vom Tag because that's the attack that breaks Vom Tag. But tactically knowing that my opponent is going to move a certain way gives me an advantage in my ability to counter. It's really, I mean, there's some really beautiful, awesome, cool, fun counters out there, but they're often hard to implement because you have milliseconds of time, just that, to decide what to do. You don't have time to stop and think about these things. So part of that is that sense of fueling that we've talked about before, especially with the Zornhau, that you just learn to feel the pressure in the bind and learn to react based on that pressure. But that's still tactile, that's still physical. This is talking about a little bit more of the chess game of fencing, in that sometimes you will go to certain positions, you will maneuver yourself a certain way in order to lead your opponent into attacking a certain thing. I know we talked about a little bit too when we did the Crump last week, in that if I go to Schrankut and I have my sword down on the side, this shoulder is left open, which makes my opponent say, okay, well, that's just sitting there. I'm going to try to hit that. So again, I have a bit of a tactical advantage because I know he's going to most likely try to attack there. Same thing here. If I go to Vamtag and I'm fighting a person that has studied this art, assuming that they were paying attention in class, they're going to want to use this Zversh against me, in which case I can be ready to do the counter. And specifically here with this one, he says, strike with, fall with the long edge on his sword. It doesn't say throw a counter initially. It just says throw, put your long edge on his sword. So you're just going to come in and just suppress his sword on this side. And then, as any of us that have trained with this stuff know, the first reaction once someone does a count, if I suppress here, they're going to want to come around to the other side, which means all I have to do is make this arc. That's it. I don't have to come around. I just have to go from suppressing here with my long edge to cutting. I'm trying to get the rotation without knocking my thing over here. Again, like I don't want to repeat it last week. Now, this one again, let's see if I can find it in the video here, but I was able to get a quick little video of that one. Oh, I should hit share with you guys first. That would be more important.
Thing is caring.
Okay, that's just a follow on. So this is the technique that is we're trying to set up, I should say, with this technique. So in this case, Sarah is in Vamtag and I'm in low Vamtag, ready to throw my Zversh. I throw one, she blocks. So in response to that, after she's thrown that parry on me and I wasn't able to get in, I leave the bind, clear her sword out of the way, and come around and strike to the opposite side. I don't know how high resolution it is for everybody, but I can see Sarah flinching here, which is just funny. So I can get that wrap around. So if I remember editing this correctly, next, yep. So here, now we're switching places. So Sarah is going to throw the initial Zversh to counter my Vamtag.
Chris.
And
is the video
yes?
playing? Because we can't see it.
Yes.
It's choppy, but it's moving for me.
Okay, maybe it's an issue with connection speed. So here is going to be the technique. From what I remembered, this will be the slow-mo version coming up. Okay. Yep, this is a slow-mo version of that. So Sarah sees me in Vamtag waiting, so she decides to use the Zversh against me. So she initially starts by throwing the Zversh. I suppress it with my long edge, just like we see in the text. So she didn't get in on her first attack. Little does she know, I planned on this whole time. So she leaves the bind to come around to the other side, and as soon as she leaves the bind, I make a very short rotation Zversh myself, and I get my blade underneath hers. So when she actually comes through and strikes with her sword, my sword is actually driven into her neck more. Thus the point of, where does he say? In this way, he strikes himself with your sword, or in this case, herself. Because the way that this happens here, that her sword is here striking in, my sword here underneath is pushed down by hers, so that I don't need a lot of power here. I will get you can get a decent amount of power with the leverage between the two hands. You can get some decent force to that, yes. But my power isn't as important as her power is. So because she's done this almost full 360 spin of her point around to come in with that strike, that is what gives this strike of mine juice here. she's basically, it's like using a like a log splitter, putting that wedge on the log and hitting it with a hammer. Except, you know, it's her face. So is that clear?
Yeah, Trevor and I actually had a lot of trouble recreating that. We couldn't remember exactly how to do it. We thought that, I don't know, we were doing something different, so the visual helps a lot. Thanks.
Okay, I have curiosity. How did you get to where you were?
So let's see. We thought that it had something to do with dropping the point of your sword when you were in the bind with someone else's thwarting stroke, which is something different. I don't remember what that is, but it's not what this was. And we did it a few times. We did it a few ways. We decided it wasn't probably correct, and so we stopped before we practiced the wrong thing too many times. And we just couldn't quite remember how to recreate the tension point of getting your blade in between you and your opponent in such a way that them moving would make your blade hit them in the head. I don't know why we couldn't. We're having trouble with that part, so that helps a lot.
Gotcha. Excellent. So yeah, the video helps kind of clear that up in your heads.
Yes, we actually the whole, like, you just doing the rotation thing is so simple that we just completely overlooked how simple it was and overcomplicated it and made it harder.
That is not unheard of with stuff. I will say that when I trained with Christian, there were times when we were looking at, I want to say, Peter Faulkner's spear, like short spear techniques. There was like one technique that he and I, again, I was doing this stuff for well over 10 years. He's been doing it for closer to 30. And we're just like trying to go through one of these specific plays. And we were both overthinking it to such a point where we had this whole convoluted and whatever. And then we both were like, this isn't working. This isn't working. We just gave up for the night. And then like the following week, we went through it again. And I'm just like, wait, no, you just rise up at the point or something. You know, it's just like, oh wait, no, you just do this. So like, oh
Right.
yeah, we were way over. So sometimes you just end up getting way too much in your own head and process it, you know, and yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Look for the
happened pretty
simple
much.
solutions.
Right. Yeah, next time we will.
But yeah, I think this is a nice counter to the Zversh, because on the initial setup here, obviously in that video you saw it from the side, but from this way, all I'm doing is going from here, suppressing that attack in from her, just to give her enough pressure that she can't strike me and you know, encourage her essentially to come around to the other side. And then all I have to do there is just that. It's just that rotation, and I'm in.
we didn't do that.
Nope.
I don't even know what we did. I don't remember.
Not that. That's all that.
The kitty's back.
So, any other commentary or questions or anything on the this counter? Everyone clear on it? Cool. Okay. Let's move on to. Oh, I lost my section. Hold on, let me focus. Striking with a sword. Okay. Note when you have bound against a combatant's sword and he strikes around from the sword with the Zversh to the other side, then fall with the long edge to his hand or arm and press his arm hard with the slice with the sword away from you and strike from the slice away from his arm to his head. So this is another counter from using that same setup. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound logical to anybody? Comments?
This is the one where you go to the hands as they're changing sides rather than going into another Zversh yourself.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, you
but
press
they
the hand,
both use
wind over and strike him in the head afterwards.
Or strike with the short edge.
Oh yeah.
Press the hands. Yeah. but it's uses the same concept of reacting to them. So they throw the Zwerch, you get that parry here. In this case, the other one was just that rotation essentially into Ox to strike for that first counter. This counter is just this. Just pivot with, a little more precision. But in terms of the overall mechanics of it, it's just 1, 2, and you're right there. In fact, again, let's pull this up. This is the Watch Chris Beat on Sarah episode, I guess. I like this episode. There's the last technique. Okay, so she comes in for the first one, finds there. She sees that I have, she feels or sees or whatever that she reacts to the fact that I've suppressed down with my long edge, so she wants to come around. When she tries to come around, I get her in the hand. I'm going to try to pause this stuff so for anyone playing it, slippery. So all I do is just kind of rotate my body a little bit, and I get right on the wrist. And again, we just did this real quick, so we didn't throw any hand protection or anything on. So I'm trying to be real gentle here. But
it's all good. I
as she
have my
comes
bracelets.
yeah, the bracelets count for something. But this gives me that suppression, and then I can slice in and get. Now, which one of us is in a better fighting position there?
You are, it looks like.
Yeah. Is my opponent in a position to make any sort of serious follow-on attack?
Nope.
No.
Not really. No. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not really. So let's watch it in slow motion. Comes in for the first attack. Boom. Defended. Comes in for the second. And as she comes in, slice to the hands and push away. And then, Rob, boop. Oh, that goes on to the next one. But once it got here, oop, not far enough. So as I suppress down on the hands, I can rise up with that short edge right from there. Get the frame control. There we go. So where he says, what was the wording again? And strike from the slice away from his arm to his head. I mean, you could hypothetically rotate the blade over and turn that into a full long edge Unterhau, but after you've mangled up their wrists with your true edge, I think just a snap up with the short edge right there, that is effective.
For sure.
So
I like this one. I use it a lot more than the other one. I find it way easier to time.
Yeah. I've used both, but this one takes less thought because it's just here. Just
I've had so much trouble making this pressing work. For some reason, I can't make this one work nearly as well as that counter's Zwerch.
Now, when you say you don't make it work, what do you mean exactly?
Getting decent leverage against the other person's wrists. Maybe it's a function of trainers and gauntlets, but it always seems like I don't have anything there.
But you are getting the gauntlet, or you are getting the wrist, right? Okay. I was wondering because sometimes people have issue with this, not basically just missing the hand entirely. But if that happens, you miss the hand and you just hit their blade. Hi, Ollie. Yeah. If you end up just catching them on the blade, okay, well, maybe the counter didn't work perfectly. You didn't get the hand pressing and whatever. But you didn't get hit in the head, so win-win.
Not getting hit, awesome. But the counter Zwerch always seems like a more accurate one for me.
Now, it's also an interesting thing to point out that when it comes to any of these things with martial arts, Rob, you're saying that you find this one to be more effective. Matt, you're saying you find the other one to be effective. You're both right. for whatever reason, based on your own skills of strength, reach, timing, years of practice, all the stuff that you two know, one technique happens to work slightly better for you in most scenarios than another technique. It's an important distinction to understand in martial arts because, and it's a lot of fun sometimes for me because, like, for example, the biggest example for some of the stuff is wrestling and harness for me personally, because when I'm a big guy, I'm used to wearing armor. So when I'm wrestling or I'm fighting or something, or especially wrestling in armor, my speed, my effectiveness doesn't really change that much. So I can kind of get away with doing whatever I want. Someone that's smaller, that isn't as used to wearing armor or whatever, might not be able to do the same sort of leg hook pickup technique that I can get away with based on my, physical advantages, not technical advantages. But it puts me in a place as an instructor that I have to kind of understand the different versions, because I can't teach you all to be a foot taller than all your opponents. I can teach you how to wrestle, I can teach you how to fight properly, but I can't teach you how to suddenly be bigger than everybody else. Unless, we go to like an elementary school playground or something, but then we're getting into legal
No beating
issues.
up my kids.
I like beating up your kids. It's so much fun. It's easy. They're so small.
Give it a year.
Amelia will.
Yeah.
Amelia will take.
You seem to
you.
have trouble
You know
with it
that,
last
right?
time.
Yeah, well, that's because that little girl got me right in the Gemacht, as the text say.
Vicious. She's my daughter.
Yeah. There's a quick little side note before we go on. In at least, I think it's 2 or 3 separate manuscripts, they refer to the general groin region as the Gemacht, which, even if you have a basic understanding of modern German, is basically the maker. So apparently the slang for the twigs and berries in this time period was the maker. So it's just an interesting little bit there. Also, because we're all friends here, there's techniques that involve thrust to the Gemacht. We skip out on those as best we can. I mean, accidents happen. Let's try to avoid that, though, for the sake of the fact that we all have to go home and live our lives and not cry ourselves to sleep.
Brings a whole new meaning to meet. Let's go meet your maker.
Worst
Wow.
pickup line.
Worst pickup line or a great pickup line? Either way. Depends. I mean, that could be a threatening thing, like to an opponent right before a fight. Meet the maker.
Gonna be a very
Okay.
card piece.
Here, note the counter against the slice or schnitt from above to the arm. Note when you strike to him with the zwerch to his right side and he falls upon you with the slice to the arm. So this is the technique we had just talked about. Then strike him by doubling with the short edge behind his sword blade to his jaw. That's weird. Sorry. To his jaw. Or if you strike with the zwerch to his left side and he falls upon you with the slice to the arm, then strike him by doubling behind his sword blade with the long edge to the jaw. So this is, I unfortunately, again, I was in a hurry. I forgot to record this one, but this is just, it's hard to describe, but if I've come around and I've thrown this zwerch and my opponent starts to get that pressure and suppression on my wrist here. Do you remember the double-in, the duplieren from the Zornau? Well, what happens to my wrist? Pushes it a little more out of the way, right? In my experience, there's a significant chance that you're still going to have their blade on your wrist, but you'll have their blade on your wrist, but your sword will be in the side of their face. So this is counter to a counter to a counter. So it's not the most ideal scenario at this point. You've gone here, they've countered, you've gone here, and now they're countering by suppression. So now you rise in with that back edge and get that rotation. Try to rotate your hands out of the way and strike in with the back edge of the sword. And this can be done on either side. If they happen to get you going, and if you're in the position here where they happen to, again, get there on camera, if they've suppressed your hands on this side, you can do the duplier in there. So we had talked about the duplier a couple weeks ago with this, but this is another application for this. The duplier works great if your opponent is giving you pressure in the bind, but it also works well as a way to relieve the pressure if your opponent is pressing down on your wrist. There's also another part of this too, that if your opponent goes, ha, got you on the wrist, and you know, all of a sudden suddenly is eating steel, his priorities are going to change from wanting to keep pressing your hands to, oh God, not the fakes. This is something that we sometimes miss out when we're using these drills with buddies in training and wearing tons of protective gear and being all friendly. But there's a big point to understand that whenever you put an actual, when you get to the point where you're pressing steel against somebody's skin, their automatic biological response is going to switch from, I was going to, you know, my plan was to do A, now it's, oh no, oh no, oh no. It's fun because in a few demonstrations and things, like I've had the Luke, I think, I did some rondelle work on you with my brass rondelle, like my actual steel one, and I remembered your reaction to it was, we've done the same drills 100 times with rubber or wood daggers, but the look in your eye when I did it with a steel one for the first time, entirely different.
Oh yeah, it's just completely different seeing a. Even though it's blunt, it's not that blunt.
Yeah, and even knowing that I wasn't about to actually drive it through your eye.
Still, you yeah.
Yeah. Matt and Sarah, by the way, it looked like you guys had grabbed some plastic and had been trying that out. It looked, I saw, as I was talking, I think I saw you guys do it, but make a bunch of noise to pull the camera to you.
I don't wanna.
Do it.
Why?
Because you saw swords.
Okay. We
Swords.
have swords everywhere.
Pressure.
Not as many as these guys. All right, Chris.
Yes.
Hey. You wanna
So
just start
pressing
out?
to the wrist.
Okay.
So I'm
Here.
for the second. Come down. All right. Yeah. So if she's got the press, then really I'm just coming up. It's almost a second Zverch as opposed to the straight duplier, correct?
It's similar, yes.
So this one just comes back up and around and straightens out there.
Yeah. Yep, a little awkward on the webcam, but yeah, exactly. Because once your sword is leaving and coming around and striking to her, she's not going to want to keep pressing your hands anymore.
And this,
yeah, go, Sarah, give a little bit of press. It's plastic.
You can see where it's going from crossed to uncrossed, and the pressure differential is big.
Yeah. This is one that, I mean, we can talk about the theoreticals of it and everything over over video chat like this, but I think this is exactly what you guys are doing, best learned with feeling it. So yeah, what do you're saying that Matt, you're saying you feel the pressure relieve?
Yeah, almost instantly. As soon as my wrists start uncrossing and straightening back out, the pressure goes from like the two of them just pushing me back to more straight down, and it's less awkward to deal with.
Excellent.
By doing that, though, aren't you then rolling your wrist into their blade, thereby cutting yourself, right? Because you've got a blade pressing your arm downwardly, but
Yes.
not cutting. But by doing
Yes.
this, you're slicing yourself.
Yeah, but I'll take a cut wrist and a decapitated foe.
Because we know too what the follow-on technique was. After you press the hands, you rise up and cut to the face. So
Yeah. I'm just saying that as a counter to, well, yeah, I don't have the downward pressure anymore, but now I have a whole new pain I have to deal with.
It's different than the downward pressure because up here and crossed, it's pressing down and back and pulling me off. You saw the picture of Sarah all tied up.
Yeah. No, I was just making a comment as to yes, you don't have that pain anymore, but now you're doing something new to yourself, so you're still
Yeah,
it's not
right.
really relieving anything.
Yeah,
don't think.
against a sharp, I think that would be less than pleasant, but better than dead.
Yeah,
It'd be a question
anything's
of
better than dead, right?
It'd be
Yeah.
a question of whether the fight was to first blood or to the death, whether or not you'd probably want to do that. I guess.
well, and it also is essentially what Rob and Matt, what you're both saying is you're both right in certain degrees. There's some other factors to this that the best hand pressings are done when you're catching your opponent with those crossed arms. So there is the pain compliance of the actual pressing in of steel swords against the wrist and everything. But a part of that is it's not just the pain compliance, which don't get me wrong, that is a factor. But there also is this binding up of the body, like Matt said, that video with Sarah, she's folded over on herself. So she just simply has no body structure to follow on with any kind of counter. If I really wanted to, I could very easily follow her into grappling onto the ground. I could follow. She doesn't have any options there to really do anything to counter. If she throws that Zversh, or the Zversh, if she throws that Duplieren, she's going to end up in uncoiling that, which relieves that captured almost wrestling lock kind of thing. But it also puts her in, so not only does it relieve that, but it also puts her in, depending on the angle of the Duplieren, either ox or flug, which now she's back to, instead of being here, she's here in a fighting position. So she can actually follow in with something. Again, the scenario might not be perfect. She might have, a little bit of, slicing to the wrists or something like that. But,
Put a scratch.
Chris,
yeah.
this might. Have you gone over like the clothing differences playing a difference?
Yeah, I was
That-
going to
If
bring
you're
that up.
in a
Historical
thick
clothing.
doublet,
there is that some of the slicings and things how to stem into this without turning it into a 3-hour discussion in and of itself.
I was going to say,
I didn't mean to derail the discussion.
No,
I just
no,
wanted
no,
to
that's
point
what-
out that I think while I think it's the best option at that time, it certainly isn't. You're definitely still going to damage yourself doing it.
With
But
the
no, Rob,
thicker
this is
linen
what I
or wool-
wanted the online classes for. This is what this structure is for, because if we were in class, I would be yelling at all of you right now to put your masks back on and get on the floor and start training again, and stop talking. But this gives us a chance to actually talk about the hows and whys of some of this stuff at a deeper level than we normally get to. So, no, it's a good question. But Luke, it sounds like you want to say something about medieval clothing.
Yeah, with the medieval clothing, doing the winding against your wrist, you'd be wearing a thick. It's the mini ice age, so you're wearing long sleeve clothes all the time because it's always cold, colder than the climate is now. But you'd be wearing a thick linen or wool doublet usually, and just as your everyday wearing. So winding against a thick coat or like a jean jacket, think of against a knife, it's not going to hurt as much as say your bare arms. Not to say it won't
Might
hurt,
not
but
be
it will hurt
pleasant,
less
yeah.
and you'll have more protection.
Yeah.
Yep. You're going to have a few layers to go through. It's the same reason why when we look at the, particularly say the dagger stuff, and I've said this to some of you before, but when you look at a lot of modern, let's say, knife combatives that are based on Filipino stuff, but with pocket knives, like the short combat knives and things, you know, this kind of stuff, and all you see is, you know, slash, slash, slash. That's because you're working on slicing in with precision here and making drawing cuts on everything. We don't see those in medieval texts. We have a few sparse examples, but everything is stabs in medieval, because if someone's wearing a woolen a linen shirt followed by a woolen overcoat that has a linen layer on the lining it, and possibly some sort of wool cloak over that, or, you know, multiple layers of cloth and natural cloth, you can slash all day and you're not going to do anything other than make their tailor very, very annoyed at you, or happy, depending, because, you know, he got more work. But stabbing is going to separate the fibers, regardless of material, is going to just simply slip between and into the fibers of the material of the clothing and hit your target. Those other techniques work, obviously, if you're dressed like I am now and just in a t-shirt, then, you know, simple cover and slash somebody's arms, those techniques are going to be fantastic because I got no protection here. But if I'm wearing multiple layers of wool and linen,
You
what
want
do I
to
care?
stab to be able to get to the juicy chivalric goodness?
I wasn't going to quote Dr. Forgang, but the juicy chivalric goodness inside. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense for other martial arts, because if you're talking about, like, you know, Filipino short sword or knife fighting or things like that, they aren't wearing heavy woolen coats in the Philippines. So slashing techniques, where you have to kind of adapt your techniques for the environment you live in. That's why there are universal principles of martial arts that are just across the board, basic styles of cuts or strikes or throws, or because there's a limit of, you know, hands only move so fast and joints only bend certain ways and things like that. That part is universal. But then you see adaptations to the sorts of items that, you know, that people would have on hand for, say, self-defense. You have all the Okinawan stuff using nunchucks and tonfas and kamas and all the stuff, because they're farm implements, so therefore you're going to have those on hand. You're looking at, you know, self-defense training stuff in modern context in the U.S. So many modern combat, you know, modern U.S. self-defense stuff is like how to quick draw with, you know, pistol and shooting here and all this, because it's freaking America and there's guns everywhere. So the odds of you being able to have a gun and want to train in it a little higher. We don't have gun draw techniques from the Middle Ages because, well, they did have guns, but they were very different. They were, you know, literal hand cannons and things. But that's another lesson. So, yeah, I think there's some adaptations based on situation, based on time period, based on clothing, based on this kind of stuff. Okay. Any other questions or comments or anything on the countering that strike to the arms there, or the pressing on the arms? Everyone good? Move on. Okay, sorry. Oh, here we get into what Chris was asking about before with thwart to the strong. Note your work on this. This is the text and gloss of another technique with the Zverch. Thwart with the strong. Note your work with this. Gloss. Note. This means when you want to strike with the Zverch, then you should strike with all the strength of the body, and that you should always bind to his sword with the strong of your sword. thereby gaining his opening. Understand this thus. When you strike with the Sversh from your right side, and he parries and binds strongly on your sword, then use the duplieren, like we had done on the Zornhau, or push his sword from the Sversh with your hilt off to the side, and with this strike to his other side. So we had talked about this early on about what we thought that comment, note your work with this, regarding this technique. This is what von Danzig tells us is at least his interpretation, let's say, of what that note your work with this means. What do people think? How does that line up with what we were saying earlier in the discussion? Nothing, Luke? He's on mute.
I got nothing right now.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you say it again? I'm sorry.
Which part? So early on, when we read that initial bit from Liechtenauer about the Thwart Stroke, we read the line, "Thwart with the strong, note your work with this." We had a little bit of a chat about that and what that meant. Chris in the comments in the text had asked about, what we thought about that. And we had talked about it a little bit in isolation at the beginning, but now we've looked at on page 118 the gloss about that. And what do we think? Does it line up with what we were saying ourselves earlier?
Yeah, I think it. Well, yeah, the note you work with this, we said, means like, this is important. Don't forget this. But I didn't consider that. It also meant like, it seems like it means to overpower your opponent, because it says that you both have the strong of your swords against each other, but it still wants you to push harder to get that opening anyway. So I think the note you work with this is not just a vague like umbrella term for like remember this thing specifically, but like to work on your strength so that you can be powerful enough to do this particular motion to gain this opening.
Yes, that's actually just what I was looking for. Thank you. Very good.
There you go.
Yeah, when we had talked about it before, we were talking about Thwart with the strong, and pay attention to that. We were talking about it very much in terms of just the placement on the blade, but Danzig does go on to point out that strike with all of the strength of your body. So I think if he took the time to write that out there, I think that's important. If you're coming in with a Zversh that's weak, and your opponent is throwing an Oberhau at you, and you've cut weakly at him, he's going to just blow through your attack, and you're going to hit him, or he's going to hit you. So you have to come in strong with the strength of the body, not the strength of the arms, to get that powerful blow in.
Like Rob was talking about this morning, hips. Use your hips to move the blade.
Yep. Oh yeah, all power in martial arts comes from the hips. That's why we all have very sexy hips. All the years and years of training.
The hips don't lie.
They do not, except when it's a failure. Okay, any questions on that then? I think that's kind of clears up what we were talking about before, but it's otherwise straightforward, right? No super deep hidden meaning, just to summarize in modern context, frickin' swing hard. Yet another. When you strike strongly with the Zversh from your right side, and he parries and is soft at the sword, then go with the short edge of your sword to the right side of his neck and spring with your right foot behind his left foot, and with this jerk him over with your sword blade. Or use the mutier into the low opening. He puts that in a line. Counter this thus: when an opponent has gone with his sword to your neck, then go up inside his sword with your pommel and let your blade hang down. Push his sword thereby from your neck and strike above at his head with snapping, or strike him with duplieren under his face with your right hand above and over his sword while he has his sword on your neck. I know this is one we've done in class, but it was a while ago we had done this one in class. In fact, I see it looks like, Rob, you're going through Ringek right now. I think Ringek has a nice example of that. This is basically talking about the idea that, actually, Rob, say something so you become the primary.
I had to unmute myself first. Saying stuff. Here's stuff that I'm saying. This is my Ringak book. This isn't the illustration from Ringak. This is a more contemporary illustration, but it's just showing stepping behind. He's got a sword blade on his neck there, and he's gonna trone.
Yeah, so essentially what we're doing is, if your opponent, if you've come into that, thrown that first Zversh, and you come into that bind, and your opponent is weak at the sword, but maybe they weakened at the sword, so you didn't get a good powerful strike in to hit them. Well, what do you do now? Well, how about if you just go for a throw? I think that illustration is not creative. No.
This one?
Yeah.
You don't think so?
No, he should be further in. He's too far away.
He's behind
In
his.
terms of
Maybe it's hard to see. He is behind his correct leg there.
He is. It's just, I personally would try to get a little closer with that, so that it turns into a little bit of a hip toss. And question for, so you're pushing against his upper body while keeping him from stepping backwards or blocking his leg. What wrestling principle is that?
I want to say it's
wrestling?
first wrestling, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong.
No,
You are right. It's first wrestling, because you're putting pressure backwards here while pulling on the. In this case, you're not actually pulling on the leg, but you're stepping behind so he can't. You're giving that resistance on his behind his leg while pushing on the front of his chest. Yep, first wrestling. I wish I'd gotten that on video, because I do like throwing Sarah. And then, so there's that part of this, and then he goes in and says, or use mutier into the low openings. What I like about that is it's thrown in as a line. It doesn't go in and say, this is what mutier is, because how many pages ago, not that many pages ago, we had already gone over what the mutier is. So it's just like, or we can do the thing you already know. Counter this thus, so let's look at the counter to that. So we're talking about using that wrestling move. When an opponent has gone with a sword to your neck, then go up inside his sword with your pommel and let your blade hang down. Push his sword thereby from your neck and strike above at his head with the snapping. So someone tries to get in close, you're here, he tries to get in at your neck, rise up, and then snap in. Pretty straightforward. Just not the face, strike. That seems pretty straightforward. Most counters like this that are multiple ways into the fight tend to be very simple, because you don't have a lot of time to come up with anything fancy. You're there. Let me see, is there an illustration that shows that specific part? Oh, there it is. Hold on, let me pull up. So one of the editions of Von Danzig actually has some illustrations, and here's the one of that technique shown. There we go. So this is the idea of, if he's weak at the sword, come into the neck, and then go for that throw. Personally, doing this myself, I'd like to get the blade in on the neck and then also use the cross guard, so that that point where the blade and the cross guard meet kind of becomes a little point of control to push right against their neck. ideally, just so that it makes it a little harder for them to try to escape. Stop. I hit the right button. Okay, I hit the right button. Okay.
I feel like that picture is really horrific.
Like that's going to go bad, or because of the guy's giant codpiece?
There's that.
I wasn't gonna comment, but that was
And
a
that
giant
video,
codpiece.
like that's disturbing in the worst way. Like, I'm just saying.
Somebody's gonna meet his maker.
It was fashion at that time period. There was something, something about cod pieces. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I believe someone even, I had read somewhere about they even would basically stuff their cod piece, not with themselves, let's say, but with like fragrant flowers and things like that. So it would, everything, just as a way to perfume themselves. Exactly.
It's peacocking.
Yeah, it was a strange time period. They wore really cool armor, but nobody's perfect. They had giant bulges. That's
And my junk smells like roses.
what was that?
And my junk smells like roses.
Yeah. Well, of all the things for it to smell like, that's a good way to go.
It's like guys who wear affliction shirts now.
I wonder what. I mean, that's something that actually I'm curious about. If it's a okay, so that was a fashion piece, but was it a fashion thing that was appreciated by all, or was it the medieval equivalent of Axe body spray? Was it just like something like 20-something-year-old men did because they thought it would get them dates, but everyone else in society was like, "The fuck is wrong with these people? Like, why are they doing this?" Yeah. What was it, the Ed Hardy shirts that are they still a thing? Yeah.
I don't know which one I'd rather.
Like Lady Gaga wearing a meat dress or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was Lady Gaga in a meat dress is a little more avant-garde. Like, that's a little more out there. That's not the Axe body spray is something that you see. God, I'd say you smell, but no, like you can see that cloud coming freaking at you. But yeah, it's definitely something that is a kind of a commonplace thing for the, let's say, early 21st century customs or fashion or something, but it was not one that was appreciated by the greater society. So who knows, maybe giant cod pieces was something that was popular amongst the knights and amongst the young men and warriors, but everyone else was kind of rolling their eyes. And we gotta see if there's like a reference in Chaucer or something calling them out. Okay, so this is a text and gloss of the Thwart. Blows to the four openings. Thwart to the plow, to the ox hard together. He who thwarts well with springing endangers the head. Gloss. Note, you have learned before that ox and flug are two postures or guards. They are also names for the four openings. So he's actually referring to that. It's a nice way of labeling these. The ox is the two upper openings on the left and right sides. Flug is the lower two openings on the left and right sides below the belt of the combatant. You should seek these same openings with the Zwerch in the Zufechten. So this is kind of like we said before, a matter of similar to that drill we do fairly regularly in class, where we practice striking with the Thwart, but two different angles. So we Zwerch to the high line, and then we Zwerch to the low line. All the while keeping the hands high so we're protecting our head. But we can change up in freestyle where those attacks are going, but for the sake of drills, we do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But anyway, I think that's pretty straightforward. Note, thus strike the Zwerch to the four openings. Note, when you come to him in the Zufechten, then stand with your left foot forward. And when the moment is right, then spring with your right foot toward him well to his left side and strike with the Zwerch with strength against his left side to the low opening. This is called striking the plow. If he parries, then strike him quickly to the upper right sorry. Then strike him quickly to the upper opening on his right side. This is called striking the ox. And then execute the Zversh nimbly away, one ox to the next, to the plow, crosswise from one side to the other, that is to the head and to the body. Also, you should know that with every Zversh, you should always spring well out to one side toward him. Thus, you can well hit his head and also take care that at the same time you are well protected above before your head with your hilt. A lot of text, but I think that's very simple text, right? How does that match up with like the drill we do in class in terms of this is what we do in training? How does that apply to an opponent?
I know that when I spar and I kind of black out and forget what I'm doing, and I go for one Zversh, I always go for the same target. I don't, in the past, I hadn't gone from high to low. I would always go from high to high, and it never worked out. And now I know why. So in the future, I would go from high to low, and I feel like today in the workout we did a high to low Zversh, maybe. I don't remember. Yeah, I thought we did.
Yeah, I told you to kind of change it up at your own leisure.
Yeah. So what I did was I did 25 high to low, left to right, and then 25 high to low, right to left to practice.
Nice.
So keeping it not so linear. So I mean, in that way, I suppose it might catch your opponent off guard if you go from trying to get to their head, they go into a high guard like Ox maybe, and then if you swing down low, you can actually swing pretty fast, in that diagonal from high to low, and you can probably catch them under their Ox pretty quick.
Yeah. And tying this in together, this is we're being told that this is a very simple thing, right? Throw the Zversh, but throw the Zversh to different openings, right? We're not talking about advanced techniques here, but it's after some of the other stuff. Why would we put this thing that seems relatively simple after some of those other things like the counters? Hint.
Because some of the counters only dealt with like defending your high line, I believe, if memory serves. I don't think any of the counters thus far have talked about defending high and low. They've always been one or the other. So switching it up in between would be countering those counters. Yeah, no, maybe, I don't know.
No, yeah, I think you're on sort of the right track here. This is kind of what I was leading into. So the first part in this section is talking about if your opponent is simply in a certain guard, throw the Zversh. Then we go into if we throw the Zversh and or if our opponent throws the Zversh, here's how to counter. Now we're going into this stuff. And if my opponent sees up, or my opponent goes to Vom Tag, I'm going to throw my Zversh to counter him. He's in Vom Tag, so he's thinking to himself, my opponent is going to come at me with a Zversh, therefore I'm going to press my long edge onto his blade and then come in and press the hands when he comes around. So he's going to, by the nature of him being in that guard, think about my most likely attack and think of that way to counter it, like we had just talked about. Now, I go in and I see that he's in Vom Tag. I throw that first Zversh, but instead of coming into that high line where he'd come in with that initial parry, what if I switch it up and I hit the low line and actually get underneath him instead? Whether I hit with the point or whether even as he presses it, even if he does get that pressing on the hands, if I've dropped my point enough, I might be able to just get underneath and essentially turn it into a, whether it's a cut, a slice, or a thrust, one of the three wounders, I might be able to get in underneath his technique, which in the order of the manuscript is something we just went over. So it's like, it's sort of this, it's not an explicit counter, but it's like, here's what to do to not get set up for that one technique we just did. Does that make sense? Like I've said before, there is definitely a very clear logic to the order of the things that we're taught here. It isn't just a series of random techniques thrown out here and there. There's a logical and tactical reason that things are taught in the order that they are taught. And I think sometimes when we do stuff in class and we're drilling, we might not always get to point some of these things out. We just kind of go from one drill to the next from week to week. So again, this is kind of the fun thing about looking at the manuscripts and really going into delving into the exact wording of how these things, how these masters talked about this stuff. Any questions on that? Striking to the ox or to the plow? Again, I think it's pretty straightforward. So just don't forget, when you throw your Zversh, you don't have to throw it to the high line. You can throw it to the high or low line on either side of the body. Oh, and what was I just saying? Just after I'm talking about how targeting the lower opening is going to make it a little more difficult for our opponent to do like a hand pressing or something. Here, note a counter against the lower Zversh. Note, when he strikes with the Zversh from his right side to your left side, above to the head, then parry with the long edge and keep the point before his chest. So keep that threat there. If he then strikes around away from your sword with the Zversh to the lower opening on your right side, then strike through underneath also with the Zversh between you and him, and also you and him also against his right side and bind on the sword, and remain in the bind and thrust immediately to his lower opening. Okay, so, I mean, just to get through some of the stuff, because it is getting hungry. Basically, this is the same kind of thing that we had done earlier, that same kind of counter. The only difference is we're not getting that placement on the neck, and with the angles of the blade, you've come in here, you've suppressed. Let me put this down. You've come in with your long edge, suppress their first Zversh. They come around to Zversh, but to the lower opening, so you counter Zversh, just like you did before. The only thing is this time, instead of being up here where you're kind of on their neck, just with the trigonometry of it, you might not get a serious placement down low, but you've ended up here where you have that protection, so you're not getting hit yourself, and you can follow in, like it says, with the thrust here. How do you say it? And remain in the bind and thrust immediately to his lower opening. So keep the hands nice and high so you have that cover, and then just look for a place to stick them.
That seems like
Stick 'em
a
with the pointy
distance thing. That seems like a distance thing to me, right? Like if you're too far apart to get that placement, because otherwise your blade would be past the body, and you wouldn't be able to really. I mean, unless you dipped it down and back in.
Part of it is distance, and part of it's the fact that there will be a change up depending on the range. You might, if you're really close, you might be able to hit them to the lower opening there with that. But if your hands are high, with the basic, trigonometry of triangles, if my hands are up here high, I can hit something out here. Like, okay, so there is on the edge of my screen there. If without moving my hands and move it to the bottom, it's way over. And this is just a little example. So
Yeah,
what happens is where I can just hit a target in the head here, I know I am not in range anymore.
Okay.
In that case, it might be in range. It might be, depending on how that action is happening, I might be able to get in there with that. But there's less chance of the cut itself making contact. So it makes a point to say, hey, be ready to thrust. Make sense?
Yeah.
I like when you guys ask good questions. This is the text and gloss of the technique called the Veiler. The failer deceives from below. It hits according to your will. Note, the failer is a technique that deceives many combatants, and it hits and strikes at will those who parry eagerly and fight. Sorry, just awkward wording. And fight the sword and not openings of the body. Note, when you come to him in this fashion, then act as if you intend to strike a free stroke from above to his head. Then pull the strike and strike him with the sversh to the lower opening on his left side or his right side, whichever you wish. And be sure that you are well protected with your hilt over your head. You can also do this with the sversh. So this is basically just a little introduction to the failer, which is similar to the concept of a feint. Now the difference is, according to other people that I've talked to over the years, in modern fencing parlance, the idea of a feint is an uncommitted attack. It's just more of a twitch thing to look like you're going to attack. A failer in the medieval texts tends to be a little more something that is committed. I throw my failer, as in, like, say, whether it's a Zornhau or a Oberhau or a Zwerschau or whatever, if I throw my failer and you, as my opponent, decide not to react to me, you just stand on guard and not move, then I'm not going to stop and withdraw. I'm just going to hit you anyway. A failer is going to be an attempted attack, and it's going to be committed. It's not something that is just like this. It's going to be a very abrupt strike, and it's meant to get a reaction out of an opponent. So I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but failures are, like it says right here in the text, are good to use against people that maybe are a little less knowledgeable and things with the sword, because they're more likely to get a reaction, or to give a reaction, I should say. So if I throw that initial Oberhau, and just a basic, nice, big telegraphed Oberhau at an opponent's upper left opening, just a regular cut from above, most opponents that aren't great are going to do something there. They're going to try to do some sort of parry, in which case, before the bind even happens, as I come in here, I throw that Oberhau. I make them, as soon as I see that they've committed, I make them react to that. I throw the Zwerch to the lower opening on the other side. I don't wait for the bind to happen here and wait till there's pressure and then leave and come around. As soon as I see that they are reacting to this before our blades touch, I come up to the other side. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that, of all things, to use, it's a lot of fun to, like, Sarah's kids. Not just them. Kids in general are really fun to use these types of failer actions on, because they're not experienced fighters in general. They tend to do very large motions, so they don't have, so, like, I don't throw failures very often when I fight Rob, because Rob's actions are very subtle and controlled, and he's very good at controlling the center line. So I don't want to do this and then just come around, because the moment I do this, he's already right there. If we're fighting someone that is not an experienced fighter, it's, like I said, especially a child or someone that does just like backyard foam sword fighting and things like that, you give them this reaction and they go, whoa, and they bring their sword way over to the side. What was that, Sarah?
I said, yes, by all means, tell us how entertaining it is to beat up a child.
It's
No.
I love
keep
that your
showing them these
chronicles of beating up children are forever on the internet now. Or will be very shortly.
Keep showing
gonna
them these things. Imagine how good Em is going to be when she's like 14 and you're too old to stand up.
Oh.
We had
Yeah,
to
but I'll
give
still
her
have.
swords so she wouldn't break the TV. This had to happen, and she's only 7.
Oh yeah, the generations of kids now. Same thing with your daughter, Rob. When we've all picked up long swords as adults, and the progress we've made and everything as a community. What's going to happen when we have this generation that has grown up with parents that have been doing it their whole lives that didn't
They're not
have.
gonna want to. They're not gonna want to do it. Is what's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, I know. No, I have hope in actually all 3 of the kids that I've seen and played with and everything in here in this chat that they all seem to be really interested in swords and they seem to have a lot of fun with it. So I mean, you never know how committed they'd be later on, but if they are even the slightest, they're going to have quite the leg up on all of us old people when they get to be adults themselves. And the fact that, like Matt said, we're going to be old and I can beat them up when they're in diapers, and they can beat me up when I'm in diapers. The world is once again balanced. So let's look a little bit more into the failure here. So yeah, the failure is that whole idea of you try to goad a opponent into reacting. So it seems like, by the way, there's a lot of stuff in the talking about the Thwart Stroke here. There's a lot of the content that's being taught with this that's baiting your opponent into giving you, whether it's an attack or a parry or an opening, whatever. It's a little bit of a tactical discussion overall in this lesson about making your opponent attack a certain way so that you can counter. Where was I? This is the text and gloss of the technique called the reverser or the Verker. The reverser enforces the running through and also brings wrestling. Take the elbow certainly, spring into his balance. Note, the reverser is known to fighters as the half stroke or the turn hand, and with it you compel your opponent so that you can run through, Durchlaufen, which is a technique we'll look at more later, and fall upon him with the wrestling. Do it like this. When you come to him in the Zufechten, then go with your left foot forward and strike from your right side with the half stroke with the reversed long edge again and again, following your left foot until you come to him. And as soon as you bind on his sword with this, then instantly hang the point in above and thrust to his face. If he parries the thrust and goes high with his arms, then run through against him. Or if he keeps his hands low in the parrying, then grasp his right elbow with your left hand and hold it fast. And spring with your left foot before his right foot and push him over the foot. Or if you don't want to push him with the left hand at the elbow over the foot as described, then send your left arm around and behind his body and throw him over your left hip. So some options here to go into wrestling. So
Yay.
this is stuff that Luke should be a fan of, because Luke loves to go into wrestling, doesn't he?
It's true.
You have a reputation for going to wrestlings.
I have no idea what you're talking about. That's not me.
Where's the illustrations I was looking for? I thought there was an illustration for this one.
With this one, I had a little bit of trouble with, just because I have no idea what the half stroke or the turn hand means at all.
He kept grabbing his sword like a half sword.
That was, or my other guess was fainting. So, some explanation on how it works would be appreciated.
You're getting close with that. It is, I believe, tied to the idea of the I mean, this is following up with the immediately following the section on the failure. this is a similar kind of thing, or I've always thought of this anyway as interpreting myself as similar to the stuff like the peacock's tail, some of these actions, or the adder stuff, these things where you work, where you're just basically looking for an opening. That it's an adder's tongue is this technique that from long point you basically just change through, and you just keep changing sides, and it just irritates that other fighter. It's an irritating thing. Same thing here with if I just keep throwing little flicks, they're not committing, they're not striking in all the way, but every time I do a little flick with that reverser, actually no, that one is up from below, sorry. Move. If I'm doing this here, flicking the point up at you, if I don't commit, every time I do that, you might be a little worried about the fact that maybe this time I am going to commit, in which case, at some point, you're going to just get a flinch reaction, and that's when I can come in and work from the bind. Does that make sense at all? This is one that this is very difficult to go over in just chat, and I wish I had gotten some video for this. So I honestly will say that I will, if Sarah or Matt are willing, I will take one of them and practice and actually, excuse me, get some video of this over the week, because this one is very difficult to describe over just text and voice, if that makes sense.
Can you read it again?
So, yes. Note the reverser is known to fighters as the half stroke or the turn hand, and with it you compel your opponent so that you can run through the Durchlaufen and fall upon him with the wrestling. Do it like this. So here's the important part. Rob, ready?
Yeah.
When you come to him in the Zufeschen, then go with your left foot forward and strike from your right side with the half stroke with the reversed long edge again and again, following your left foot until you come to him. And as soon as you bind on his sword with this, then instantly hang the point in above and thrust to his face. If he parries the thrust and goes high with his arms, then run through against him.
Mm-hmm.
Or if he keeps his hands low in the parrying, then grasp his right elbow with your left hand and hold it fast, and spring with your left foot before his right and push him over the foot. Or if you don't want to push with the left hand at the elbow over the foot as described, then send your left arm around and behind his body and throw him before you over your left hip. The last two bits there about taking the elbow or going, how do you say it, behind his body, that's stuff from First Wrestling that should be familiar to everyone. But the Verker, the reverser itself, is this idea of baiting it in with this. I really think it doesn't entirely belong, in my opinion, in the section on the Zwerch. I feel like this is one of those sections that is sort of like the way I teach, and very the way I can go from subject to subject. But I think he's talking about it in ties to the Failer, because the Failer goes into a technique with the Zwerch. So I feel like it was one of those, oh yeah, I need to talk about this now because it comes up in a, as a more important point later on. But the idea here is that you're throwing these similar to a Failer cuts at your opponent that are half cuts. You're not committed to them. They're cutting up from below. They're half committed, but they're enough
flick,
that
like.
Yes, Exactly. Flick is a good word. So eventually you get a reaction out of him, and when you do, you come into the bind. You basically force a bind, and rather than trying, you can try to look for an opening and hang the point to the face, but also go into the hanging of it, and yep. So as you come up to that,
And then, right. So what if he parries this and takes the bait, right? And then I'm
Mhm.
sliding in and suppressing the elbow. Is that correct? And then moving in for wrestling at this point, or I don't know, maybe turning my sword over and stabbing him or something.
yes, you're tracked on, but the idea, I think, you're missing a little note on that, Rob. You're really close, but the only note you're missing on this is, and it's a little bit in the comments about the thing about going towards the face with the point, because then what happens is if your opponent sees the point coming in at his face, so you've thrown in here, you've gone to hang, and you have the point towards his face. His reaction is going to be to raise his own sword, right?
Right.
So it's not a suppression this way down on his elbow. It's the up from below, rolling the elbow over. It's this one. So because you forced his hands high, he's here. He's going to be up like this to that. Oh, crap. And now with that elbow there, you're going to get the push over and then turn that into a third wrestling.
Okay.
Now, with all the other conditions and things, it could turn into a first wrestling, just because,
They
like
talk
you're doing
about that
with the half
afterwards
sword.
about stepping behind, right?
Well, no, it says step in front of his right foot.
Oh, for the second option?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Did it say in front? I could have sworn it said in front.
Yeah, it's in front, and then pull him over your left foot.
Wait, what?
Yep. So this is that the elbow catch that Ott loves. Remember when we did Ott a couple years back now? And every other technique is get under the elbow with the wrist and just that rowing action, just rotate here. It's that kind of thing. You've come in, you've gone, whether you wound this way, whatever, you're getting the point in to threaten their face. And when they raise their hands, you let go of your sword with your left hand, roll the elbow, and step in and get that forward throw. Matt and Sarah, looks like you're trying it out. If you want to get on camera and make a bunch of noise.
Dear God in heaven. Oh no, not again. All right.
So, Chris, if I'm right,
Yes.
this is like that kind of one of these, sorry. Right? And she goes to stop this thrust, so you lift up. And then I'm coming in here.
Go with your left hand, Matt.
That one.
Yeah. Yep.
Or it's the step in, come around this way.
Oh, I get you.
Behind the back.
I hate you all. I'm scared to get thrown off the chair.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah, and in Sarah's defense about being, getting scared by that, for those that haven't been at their house, that railing that they're standing right next to is the railing over right next to the stairs going down to the basement. So
she wasn't aimed at the railing. She was aimed at the window. It was fine.
Ow. Sorry. My clapper fell over on my foot because everyone had to make a thing about me getting it out before.
Chris, when he's saying the reverse long edge, does he just mean false edge?
That is
short edge, rather?
That is something that has been a point of contention for a long time amongst people that have. That's not new argument. When I have implemented this technique before, I've used it as the short edge. I usually come up from relatively low and I throw, I do
Is
it
that-
as a flick with the short edge.
That does make it kind of like a half-hearted Zwerch, right?
Yeah,
So maybe that's why it's in that section, like you were saying. You weren't sure why it was there.
yeah, it's not full on, but there's a little bit of element to it, if it makes sense.
It's a weird way to put it. Reverse long edge.
Yeah, like I said, this is one of those the subtleties of this section here, because there isn't any. I am 99% sure the term Verker never pops up again in any other part of the text. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, here's this thing, and then it moves on and never really goes into it. So as a result, it's not like one of these other ones like we just saw Mutiaren referenced. And we had Mutiaren described a couple techniques ago, with the secret strikes a couple classes ago. So if we were unsure about interpretations of Mutiaren, we could look at, okay, well, Mutiaren is used here, it's used here, it's used here, it's used here. If we don't understand how it works, we can kind of reverse engineer, okay, well, we don't understand how it works here, but we have this other explanation, and therefore we can kind of cross extrapolate. The Verker gets brought up now, and then it's like completely dropped. So there's nothing else later on to corroborate, to cross-reference to anything else. So all we can really do is compare some of the different masters that talk about it. So it's an unusual concept. Like I said, I personally don't use it often myself the way it's talked about. But when I have used it, I use it with my short edge because it says the reversed long edge. I don't.
Yeah.
That's just the way I've adapted.
Strange.
Yes. Extremely strange.
Like, why does it matter?
I honestly think, by the way, of all things, I think this, if we can really figure it out, I feel like this would fit your fighting style, Rob.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I kind of like this.
Yeah, because you do stuff like.
I do that elbow suppression a lot.
And you do that kind of stuff when we've done like rapier and things. Like when we've done other weapons, you tend to like to throw those cuts in to test the waters before you make a committed. So some of this stuff going over the failers and the Verkers and everything, that it seems like this is right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna see about getting some clear video about that, and then next week we'll just have like a little mini addendum. Plus, I think next week will be the Sheelhow, the Squinting Stroke, which has a little less content than the other ones anyway. So we'll look at the Verker again a little bit more, and over the week, if everybody wants, if you want to try coming up with your own interpretations, try getting some video or something of yourselves trying it out, and share with the class, see what you think. Take some extra time to think about it. But for now, let's move on to the next. And is it the last section for this? Yep, the last section for the Zwerchau. This is the text and gloss of another failer. Double the failer. If you hit, also do the slice. Do it further twice. Strike to the left and do not be slow. Note, this is called the double failer. Ding! This is one of my favorites. And should be done thus. When you come to him in the Zufechten, then stand with your left foot forward and hold your sword on your right shoulder. And when the moment is right, then spring toward him with your right foot well to his left side, and act as if you intend to strike a free Thwart Stroke to his left side of his head. So sort of like the failer. If he parries and you hit his sword, then spring to hit the same side away beside him and slice him with the short edge behind his sword with the doubling to his jaw. Or fall with the sword over both arms with the slice. Also, you can execute the failure from the strokes above as well as you can from the thwart blows with them when the moment is right or when you wish.
I remember this one. This is your anime attack.
Yes,
You
it
know how to run past them.
Generally, yeah, the way it ends up playing out. This is the idea that you commit to one, and this is the there's the failure here, and there's the double fail. So the single failure is the idea that I throw, or I should say the zwerch, I throw that zwerch, and if I get commitment to that, I can throw the duplieren. The idea being that this zwerch is that failure. I'm not 100% committed to this. I'm focusing on, I'm throwing it, but I'm really thinking about doing this. So I'm going to throw this and turn it in. Once I have you worried about this and starting to parry, I'm going to turn it into the duplieren. The double failure is the same thing, except it's to zwerch. So I come in here with the first zwerch, that free stroke. Leia, I love you, but you can't jump on my lap right now. I'm swinging a sword. Throw the first zwerch, get commitment. Throw a second zwerch, and then when they react on that side, throw the duplieren. So 1, 2, 3. Like you said, this is one of my favorites. So as much as I forgot about the Verker when I was doing this before, I did share screen, hit Sarah with this one. It's fun. I like it, Sarah. I went too far. Okay, so there's the last technique. So here it comes. Windows Media thing has terrible pausing and stuff. Okay, so here's the first part. I throw that first zwerch, trying to get her to commit to something. She sees that coming and goes, oh no, I don't want to get hit in the head. So I come around to the other side, and I roll it back just a few frames. There we go. And then I make another committed, but not fully committed, cut to the opposite side. So once again, she goes, oh no, and starts to parry that. Once I have this pivot point of resistance from her, then I turn that in to a duplieren. So we'll watch it in slow-mo now. Again, I get commitment coming out from the zwerch. She parries. I come around and zwerch to the opposite side, and she parries that. And then once she's committed to that parry, I turn it into a duplieren and strike with my short edge. And I like to take that extra nice little step there and take her backwards. There's slow. 1, 2, and 3. Boop. Okay. I enjoy watching that. I should have just thrown her into the ground if it wasn't covered in mud and stuff from working in the yard. You're my favorite.
Shut up, Valley.
Favorite test.
Trying. I'm trying to do the hand heart thing, but my hands are all messed up from years of fighting. And this is as best as I can get. You know, I can't see what that is. It's just a glare. Your camera's white balancing.
My camera box, but
Oh
it's Chris
God,
beating
yeah.
up
More child
Did you-
abuse, I see.
that was at a birthday party, I think, and it was like
That was your birthday party.
It was my birthday party.
As an educator, I am a mandated reporter. I'm just throwing that out
That's
there.
his house, but it was my surprise party. Of
Sarah, could you send it to me?
course I can. Do you want the
So
other
I can-
shot too? Because there's definitely like it's so cute though.
Let me see that one for now, just because I want. so we can see it a little clearer.
I sent you other ones too. I sent you Parker when he was little.
Yeah, you sent me cute little pictures.
Cute little pictures. No, I want.
Yeah, he doesn't want the cute pictures of the kids. He wants the ones where he's beating them up.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm working on it. My thumb doesn't work.
There's the
Oh, nice.
menacing little Parker.
Look at his face though. He's so committed. There was a bunch of you fighting him.
You're taking too long. So while Sarah's doing that, so like I said, that technique there is one of my personal favorites. I'm a big fan of that one. So does that? I don't think is there much explanation beyond that then? I think with the video, I think that's pretty straightforward. The idea is that I mean, I think part of this is tactically you throw your first Zversh to get their attention going one side, and then quickly throw a Zversh to the opposite side, at which point they're kind of already going, oh no, reacting very quickly. And then in that moment that they're trying to catch their bearings of, okay, he's striking to this side, okay, striking to this side, before he can do anything in response to that, that's when you use the duplier and that doubling, and you strike to the face. We get the picture of the.
So I didn't get to say a chance to say it. But hi, Owen. I saw you arrived ages ago.
Here's a picture of me doing a little child abuse. He left himself open.
This is Sparta.
There's more.
So, any questions on the the double failure then? Anyone have anything to add to that? Okay. Well, that's one of those that if you pull that off in class, especially if you pull it off like against me, I will be so proud and love you forever. Like anybody that pulls off the full double failure in sparring will just win all sparring for that night. Just straight out. We'll get like a special medal or a T-shirt or something. We'll figure it out. But definitely earn some sort of place of renown and respect.
Medieval
It's a
Beast
cool
Mode
technique, and
t-shirt?
what was it?
Medieval Beast Mode T-shirt.
Oh yeah. We can work on the graphics of that, by the way. I sent you an email earlier. Okay, so that will wrap up our section on the Zwerchau and some of the follow-on plays for tonight. Next week, we will continue to look at this with the Schielhau, or Squinting Stroke. This is page, I believe, 98 still. Page 99 of In St. George's Name. And then the gloss is pages 120 and 121. So 99, 120, and 121 for the pages in the text. Any questions before we wrap up for tonight?
No,
No, nothing springs to mind.
but a lot was cleared up, so thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And anytime, if you have any questions over the week or whatever, shoot me an email, catch me on Facebook, whatever. I've been at work most of this time and bored out of my mind, and I have my little like indoor trainer, sort of like this guy, in my office. So if you catch me during the week, you might be able to distract me for a couple of hours of a job I hate. So feel free at any point to pick my brain on stuff.
No one at your work watches your YouTube channel.
I hope they do.
Oh, I'm sure they don't. Okay, well, that wraps it up then for tonight. Thanks everybody. I had some excellent questions, and next week we'll continue and look at the Shield House. So have a good night.
Thank
You too.
you. You
Thanks, Chris.
too.